Hey, Psych 2. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, and we're going to continue on with our notes over psych disorders, chapter number 7. Again, just a reminder that all your chapter 6, stress and health assignments are this Friday, April 13th. Those are on Canvas under assignments. I just posted your quiz today, so you can go in there and take the quiz. And then also your chapter 7 assignments are listed as well as the video that I will be referencing today, so you can watch that, okay? So yesterday we introduced chapter 7, psych disorders, and we talked about basically the definition for abnormal, since we're talking about a lot of times this class or this subject is called psych disorders, is also abnormal psychology. So it's actually one of the most it has been, like the last 5 years, been the #1 most taken elective college class in America, which is abnormal psychology or psych disorders. If you ever get the chance to take it, it is an amazing class. It is just so fascinating and so interesting. So, you know, what we're covering is actually an entire college class. So it could be in a college class. So obviously we're not going to give it its justice, but we're just going to cover kind of what's in the Psych 2 curriculum for Liberty North High School. And then today I will also be introducing one of your assignments for chapter 7 is your psych disorder chart, which you'll take a picture and just send it to me when we're done. But also it's a good way, and the reason that I make it an assignment is because it's a good way to keep your notes over each of the psych disorders. Now again, remember you can use your notes, any notes on the quiz. So you can use your chapter 6 notes on the quiz for chapter 6. You can use this and any other notes that you take for chapter 7 quiz, okay? All right, so we talked about the definition of abnormal, what makes these disorders abnormal. We also talked about the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, DSM-5, that is used to diagnose these disorders. So again, they have to fit a medical diagnosis criteria requirements that are all housed in this manual. And then we talked about the difference between psychotic and neurotic. Make sure you know that. That's actually on our chart. And then also on Canvas, there's a doc with links to several different organizations on mental health statistics for adolescents. And you have to kind of identify 5 of those, and that'll be on your quiz as well. I'll ask you to write down, be 5-point question, 5 adolescent mental health stats, okay? And hopefully, you know, that was very enlightening, very eye-opening, how relevant this class is and this topic is to everybody, but specifically your age group, as the stats with the number of diagnoses, the number of people dealing with mental health issues at your age group is just skyrocketing. So, okay. All right. So today what we're going to do is we're going to start a category or class of disorders that are called anxiety disorders. So every one in the chart, and I'll give you time to go ahead and get your chart started. And again, an example of the chart is on Canvas, but you need to have 5 categories to your chart. The first one is the name of the disorder, the DSM-5 category, the symptoms, causes. Sorry, come closer. Okay, is that good? Okay, and then I'll go slowly over this first one as we talk about these 3 disorders. So we're going to talk about generalized anxiety disorder, or what is commonly referred to as GAD. We're going to talk about panic disorder, and we're going to talk about phobias, okay? Now, these are all in the DSM under the category of anxiety disorders. Okay. Whoops, that should be down. So generalized anxiety disorder is an anxiety disorder. Panic disorder is an anxiety disorder, and then phobias are an anxiety disorder. So if you were using the DSM-5 and you opened it up, you would look, they'd be classified under anxiety disorders. So it would say anxiety disorders, you turn to that section, and then it would list all of the qualifying specific disorders that would could be found under the anxiety disorder section, okay, which you would find these 3. And actually, I think these 3 are mentioned first in the DSM-5. I think I'm going in order of the DSM-5, actually. Okay, so Now, these are not all the anxiety disorders. We're actually going to divide that up into 2 days. So this part 1 will be today, and then we'll do the second half tomorrow. Again, we are not going to cover all the anxiety disorders, as there are several. There are several anxiety disorders, but we're just going to cover, I think, 6 total. So we'll do 3 today and 3 tomorrow. Okay. All right. So generalized anxiety disorder, which is kind of hard to wrap our minds around. This would probably be the worst anxiety disorder. Again, not that I want to get into rating them, because any type of anxiety disorder would be very, very tough, very impactful on your social functioning, your day-to-day functioning. And anxiety is a very physical and psychological illness. Not only is it a response and a thinking process, but you feel it. If you've ever heard anybody say, I feel anxious, and it does have a very, very physical component as well. All of these disorders do. And that's one thing I want to make sure I communicate, whether you are experiencing these or you know somebody who has, but all these psychological disorders are obviously psychological in nature, and the mind is just not well. It's sick. Just like any other organ in your body can become sick, your mind can become sick, and it needs treatment. Just like if your appendix got sick, your stomach got sick, any of that stuff. Your brain is an organ. It's the most important organ, but it can also get sick and not function correctly. So you feel it in your mind and in your brain, but you also feel it throughout your body. So, we'll be talking about not only psychological symptoms, but physical symptoms. And the first symptom that you have to have in let me go back and define this. Okay. So generalized anxiety disorder is basically when I am in a constant state of anxiety. Okay. Most of you in our normal state, we're not anxious. We talked about that homeostasis. I'm just kind of normal. And then I'll have periods of anxiety, depending on what level I have, but I'll feel anxious about something. I'll worry about something, and then it'll be gone. Okay. Generalized anxiety disorder, these people, it's the opposite. Their normal state is a state of anxiety, panic, and fear. So that's what every day, every night experience is for them. It is fear. Okay. So, and I'll show a close up of this here in a minute. Every day, fear, physical and mental. Okay. So their body acts physically like they do when they're extremely afraid. Okay, so everyday fear, physical and mental both, and that's why it's called generalized, because it's just generally a part of their everyday life. They do have constant panic attacks. Okay, and just a constant state. Okay, so again, and I'll pull this up towards the end here. Actually, I'll just do it now. Okay. Whoops. All right. So what we have is symptoms are everyday fear, both physical and mental, constant panic attacks, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and just a constant state of fear and anxiety. Okay. So that is their normal day-to-day state. Which is a heightened level of fear and anxiety, which is why it's called generalized anxiety disorder. Okay. So life would be would be very rough for this. So, from the minute they wake up, they're in this constant state of panic and fear. And a panic attack, which actually is kind of the main symptom of all of these disorders. So one of the DSM requirements is for you to have an anxiety disorder, you have to have a panic attack. And actually, generally, you're going to have multiple. Now, some of you might have had an anxiety attack or a panic attack by itself, and you can have them without being diagnosed, but they are pretty constant, and they are pretty much a part of everyday life, especially for a generalized anxiety disorder patient. Since they're constantly in that state of fear and anxiety, they're constantly having physical reactions to their fear, and they're slipping into these panic attacks. And basically what a panic attack is, and you can just Google it or look at the list, but there's basically a list of, I think, 12 or 15 physical responses to fear. And you have to have a total of 4 of those, I think, that peak within 10 minutes. So a panic attack is when I have a massive physical reaction to my fear and anxiety. So the fear and anxiety I'm thinking, that's in my mind, that I am thinking, or that is just physically on me. So these patients are going to have constant panic attacks because they're constantly in that level of heightened fear and anxiety. So if you think about the last time that you were kind of really, really terrified by something, whether it be in a movie or a concept of something or whatever, usually that's a pretty fleeting moment. But for these people, it's just an everyday occurrence. That's their normal. That's what it's like. So you can imagine the side effects and just the unpleasantness that would be. But that's kind of what they have. Okay, so that's why this is kind of considered to be the highest level of anxiety disorder that you could have. Okay. Now, the causes of this one are biological. And it is neurotic. Okay, because it is based on an abnormal level of fear. So, so I'll focus it up here so you can see it. So again, this one is biological. All right, so what we know is that there are issues with the brain. The amygdala and several other brain structures just are not functioning correctly. And so that fear response that starts in that limbic system area of our brain, the kind of center of the brain, and with the amygdala, which is involved in everybody's fear response, just lights up all the time. So it is very biological in nature. And obviously it's all anxiety disorders are going to be neurotic. Okay, so basically I had a psychiatrist explain it to me back when I was doing my certification for therapy. Is that, it's kind of like a light switch. You and I normally throughout the day, the light switch is off. And if we encounter something that scares us or makes us anxiety, the switch is clicked on by the amygdala in our brain. And then as soon as the fear stimulus or whatever is gone, the switch goes off. And so basically, throughout the day, we might have the light on, a few times, where these people, it's on all the time and it never clicks off. So there's a malfunction there in that fear response, the biological response, in which it's just on all the time. And so these people constantly feel that state of panic and fear, and they don't even need a stimulus. That's what makes it so abnormal, is they're not really thinking fear, but their body is reacting in fear all the time. Okay, so biological and neurotic, right? And again, the video that I posted in the assignments post is about actually New Kids on the Block. If you remember New Kids on the Block, so the first really significant boy band, the two brothers, John and Jordan Knight. If you ever wonder why they stopped touring, John has generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. He kind of refers to them both, which is kind of hard to differentiate the two. Hopefully I'll do a good job on the video. But they have anxiety, and his brother has some anxiety issues as well. But the video is about them being on Oprah, and then they talk to the two brothers, which were the lead. Jonathan was the lead singer of New Kids on the Block, so you got the right stuff, baby, and all that stuff. Okay. And then they also go into two female patients who have, one has panic disorder, one has a phobia, and I think another one has generalized anxiety disorder. So it's a pretty good video. It's 44 minutes long. It's like an Oprah special. You can jump around if you want. But they also talk about panic attacks. So it's really good to see that happen. You actually can see Jonathan Knight having a panic attack at the beginning of the show. And then he is medicated. You'll see the physical symptoms, physicalness of the disorder. Okay. All right. Number 2 is panic disorder. All right. What I'll do is I'm going to fill it in, and then I'll talk and show it to you. So it's up there so you can take notes if you can't see it. So panic disorder is an anxiety disorder. Okay. And it is basically based on panic attacks. And they are random, with no stimulus. Okay, so draw a line here. Okay, so panic disorder is a disorder in which people have random panic attacks. So they don't have a stimulus at the beginning, but the panic attacks just randomly happen. Okay, so if any of you have actually experienced a panic attack or an anxiety disorder, they are very, very unpleasant. They are physically painful, uncomfortable, nauseating. I mean, they are just a terrifying experience overall. There are thousands upon thousands of people every year who have panic attacks, who actually check themselves, go to the emergency room because they think that they're having a heart attack, because one of the symptoms of a panic attack is pain in my chest, actually specific pain right here on the left side where your heart would be. So it's so physical enough to where people think they're having a heart attack and they go to the emergency room. They run all the tests, they don't find anything wrong with their heart, and then they're discovered that they're having a panic attack. So that's how physical these symptoms are. They are very powerful and very strong, and very unpleasant. So what happens with these people is that they just start having these panic attacks at random. They are just having them at random times, multiple times throughout the day. And obviously you'll do anything in your power to avoid a panic attack. And so then what happens is they begin to associate the panic attacks with places. If I had one at the grocery store, I'm not going to go to the grocery store. If I have one in my car, I'm not going to go to my car. Generally there will be just a few places that don't cause, or I don't have a panic attack, and those become my safe places, but then they just pretty much don't leave those things. So Jonathan Knight in the video, I believe for 3 years does not leave his house. He actually, I think, goes to his bedroom and his kitchen, and that's about it. He becomes a recluse because if he's not sleeping, if he's not in his bedroom, he's not in his kitchen, he's having a panic attack. Again, sounds like generalized anxiety disorder, but I think it started as panic attack or panic disorder first, and then moved into this. So he just started having these panic attacks, on stage while he was performing, before he was performing, when they traveled, and then it kind of slipped into this constant state of anxiety and fear. So, this would be a terrible disorder as well, as they all would be. But this one, you're just having uncontrollable panic attacks without any stimulus. Again, these people are not thinking fearful thoughts. They're not really afraid of anything. They're not anxious, but their body just slips into this massive psychological response to fear. And it's biological. And it is neurotic. Okay. All right. So again, it's a malfunction in the brain. It's kind of like the light switch analogy. Your panic attacks are physical responses to fear. It's because of an abnormal high sympathetic nervous system response. And for some reason, these people are just having these panic attacks. And it's because the brain's not functioning properly. The brain switches, and then, the panic attacks start. So they then become fearful of places that they have panic attacks, and then the fear just grows. But it is very biological in nature. So unless you have a biological issue with the brain, again, the amygdala, the sympathetic nervous system, the limbic system, that core part of the brain, you're not going to be diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder or panic disorder, okay, because they are very biological in nature. They actually have the most biological causes of any of the anxiety disorders. And there are a few others of the ones that we're going to cover today, or this unit. These are kind of the most biological, okay? All right, and again, these are also kind of sometimes the hardest to grasp because we can't relate. We cannot relate to that. We can't relate to having a panic attack. We can't relate to being in a constant state of fear, and we can't relate to just having these panic attacks at random, which would be very debilitating to a person, okay? A huge fear of something, but it's still not going to be a phobia because it won't meet the diagnostic criteria. For you to have a phobia, you have to have a panic attack associated with a certain stimulus. Baseball stimulus. U-L-U-S. Yeah, it's you. Okay. All right. This one is more environmental. A phobia is when I have a panic attack, but only when I come into contact with a specific item or stimulus or situation. And so otherwise I'm fine. So you can already see the huge difference between phobias and these two, right? With a phobia, I am not in a constant state of fear. I'm not in a constant state of panic. I only go into those stages when I see a spider, when I'm around heights, or whatever, claustrophobia, when I'm confined into a small space. So then obviously I begin to avoid those things, and they can take me out of life as well, and really negatively impact my socialization, my daily functioning, depending on how scared I am of those objects. Arachnophobia is a 1980s movie, which is a great movie if you ever want to watch it, just for a classic 1980s movie. But the rates of arachnophobia went up, just like the rates of Agoraphobia, which is a phobia of clowns, went up when Stephen King's It came out, because that's a freaky clown. So those people are fine unless they come in contact with a spider or a clown. Now, it can be on TV, it can be in a book. It just depends on each individual case. When I was doing my supervision hours, as a group, we had to help a woman who had arachnophobia, treat her, therapy, and get her over that. And she was getting to the point where she wasn't even able to leave her house, because just the thought of a spider in her car, if she saw a spider at work, she didn't watch TV. If she saw it on TV, she wouldn't go to rooms in which she had seen a spider, that she was really starting to cave in. So we, under the supervision of our therapist, went in and helped her out. And really, it's all environmental. Okay, it's all environmental. So this, obviously, there's a biological component with the panic attack, but the cause is usually environmental, meaning that they've had a traumatic experience with the spider. The patient that we treated, she had gotten chased by a spider, she thought, when she was little. So she went down to the basement, and there were these big wolf spiders down there, and she thought that one came after her, and it might have. And so she ran away and ran upstairs terrified. So that's generally a big thing when you're a child and you're chased by something. It can create a lot of fear. It can really kind of start you. That's actually Agoraphobia, is actually because of a costume character chasing you when you're young, probably just to be fun and to be entertaining. But the kids perceive it as fear, and it kind of starts it. So usually there's a very traumatic event to it. And then obviously it is neurotic. So I'll hold that up here for this one. Okay. So again, if you notice, it does have the key qualifier of panic attack, right? But they're only going to have the panic attack when they come in contact with a specific stimulus. And it can be more than one stimulus, but if you get too many stimuluses, then what's going to happen is you start going into panic disorder, and so on and so forth. So, as we know, our fears can grow, and we definitely don't want that to happen. Or in the DSM-5, they talk about agoraphobia, which is, again, the fear of open spaces. So phobia can turn into agoraphobia quickly. All right, so again, I have to have a traumatic event, a bad experience, or something in the environment that kind of teaches me the disorder. And then, of course, it is neurotic as well, because it's based on an abnormal level of fear. Okay. All right, so those are the three today. So generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and phobia, or called specific phobia or phobic disorder. Okay, most of them, again, all of them have the criteria of a panic attack, which you do have to have, in which the DSM-5 has a whole section on what a panic attack is. It has its own diagnostic criteria, the symptoms, the time, the number that you need to have. Now, it in itself is not a disorder. It is a symptom, a required symptom of anxiety disorder. So it's obviously found in all three of the ones that we talked about today, and it'll be found in all three that we talk about tomorrow. Right? Panic disorder and generalized anxiety disorder are biological, and phobia is environmental. Okay. All right. They all obviously are neurotic, because they all have that abnormal level of fear at the base of it. Obviously, if it's biological, these are going to be treated by medication, obviously therapy, but also medication is needed. This one, therapy can just cure this one. Now, they can use medication as well to help, but generally You know, there are several types of therapy that are very successful in curing phobias. In AP, we talk about that. We actually watch somebody go through a journey of therapy to get over their fear of clowns, coulrophobia. It's a woman. That's what we need. So again, we started your chapter 7 chart. All right. So you're going to turn this in for points, and you're going to be able to use it for notes on your quiz. So this is a double whammy. So make sure you have it and watch. If you can't watch the live streams, watch it on video. Thank you for whoever liked the video. Appreciate that. And then also, if you missed anything, you can supplement with the online text. You can email me if you want. But the link to the John and Jordan Knight video is on Canvas already. I put that on this morning that you can watch it, and it gives you a really good picture of these two. I think we all have seen incidents of phobias. But again, you can Google them as well and watch them, but it's really good. And probably your parents, new kids on the block, were fans. I mean, they still, you know, thousands of people come see them in concert. Their concerts are all sold out when they tour. So it's kind of a good insight into that and kind of why that band just kind of broke up. Now you know, it's because the psychological disorders that Jonathan and Jordan were having. Okay. All right. Any questions before we go? If you have a question, if you need anything, again, you can contact me. Any of the various sources that you have, email, and then if we need to, we can do a duo, a chat, a meet, FaceTime, you know, whatever. All right. But hey, have a good day. It is Tuesday, March 31st. All right. This is the live stream for the day. Go out and get some sun.